Oh. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second week of CADA Trumex's Bootcamp. I was muted. I'm sorry. Today we are going to be playing around with digital sculpting. Last week we sat in Blender. Blender's what's commonly known as a DCC, a digital content creator, which means it's a specialist, or it's not. It's a generalist software that can do sort of everything, but it's not going to do the same thing specialist softwares do very well. Today we're going to touch upon the ZBrush Core Mini. It's a boiled down version of a program called ZBrush that is very much a specialist tool. What it can do compared to Blender is it can work with hundreds, if not millions, of polygons and faces without losing performance. And it does that really, really well. So I'm going to give you an introduction to how this works. Let me just start by moving this. And last week we had a poll based on what creatures we should make today's dragon on. And chicken and seahorse were the two that came up on top. And we will be making it based on the references I have here. And also I've been experimenting a little bit with AI art. And we'll try and see if we can maybe hit some of this as well. It's going to be great fun. Yes?
So just want to also catch you up with the chat. We have a lot of people saying hi from home.
Hi.
Emily, Guji, Refraction, Felix Theodur, Sanatis, Refraction, Gator, Clara More Media, and Goja. And Renio. Hello.
Gosha?
Goja.
You're butchering that name.
How do you say that name?
Koya?
How do you spell that? Because that sounds, the way you pronounce it sounds like it's my wife watching.
Actually,
yeah.
Well, it's Koja.
Oh, no, that's not
and
my
then
wife.
Koya.
And it's not my wife.
No, okay.
Sorry, that would have been very entertaining. All right, so before we start sculpting, let's learn how to navigate around in ZBrush Core Mini. It doesn't have a startup screen like Blender does. It'll just start you up with a nice, beautiful sphere like this. And this is our base mesh. This is our base for anything we really make. The way we navigate around is if we left click and hold out in the gray area, this will spin around. To begin with, it might be a little bit hard to see. I'm just going to do like this to show. Oh, yes, you can. Sorry. It doesn't matter which one. There you go.
This one's really better.
Yep. Now you can see, left click and drag. This will allow me to orbit around in 3D space. Left click and shift will like snap you to different views. Control and left click will zoom in and out. This can also be done, no it cannot, that's in full ZBrush. And then Alt and left click will move things around in your scene. First thing to notice is, oh, lovely. So this is an error that will happen sometimes. This is gimbal locking. Normally I have to try and provoke it later, but it happened perfectly naturally right now. Sometimes your ZBrush will lock its navigation, its orbiting to a specific angle, and that's super annoying because you can't really get out of it. You can see I'm trying to move it out. The way to get out of this is grabbing this little dude and then just resetting your viewport, and we have full control again. All right. All those controls because also work if you right click anywhere. This can be really useful if we're zoomed in this much, because then we might not be able to find a little gray area out here. Then right clicking will help us a lot, because this means we can now zoom in and work with our things. Okay, I'm just going to reset my file. I do not want to save. There we go. So, first things we want to do is turn off our perspective. This sounds really counterintuitive and weird, but ZBrush's perspective view isn't very great. So we're either going to hit P on our keyboard to turn it off, or this little persp button up in the upper right-hand corner, and this will turn off our perspective. Because like I said, ZBrush's perspective ain't great. Then we're going to go out on our top left-hand side. Up here we have all our tools. We have 12 tools, 13, but 12 tools in all. And even though it starts on standard, that's not the first tool we want to use. We want to use the move tool. Because the first things we want to do when we start a sculpt is we want to define the basic shapes. If we get the basic shapes right first, all our details afterwards will be like a secondary thing. Our first priority is always getting the silhouette and the basic shapes of whatever it is we're doing down. So I'm going to drag my reference back in. You should all be able to see it. And I'm going to zoom in on our chicken. It's beautiful, right? So I'm going to use my move brush. You can see I am now manipulating parts of my geometry to create the basic shape of the chicken head. I'm not trying to match it 100%, but I am trying to match it somewhat. If you make a movement that you don't like, you can press Ctrl-Z to undo it. And that is really nice, because we don't have that when we're working with clay in reality, but we have it when we work with it digitally. If your brush is too small, you can see I have this. It's very small. I don't have a lot of control. I can press S on my keyboard. This will bring up the draw size slider, and I can make this really big. It's a good rule of thumb to start big and then work smaller. And we're going to start by just quickly pulling around a lot of geometry. Going to look at it from a few different angles. I want the front to be a bit thinner. This is going to be the beak mouth area. So therefore I want this to go in. I want this to be like that. I'm going to look at it from different angles, making sure that my overall shape is good. Let me just move this to the side. Now, in creating creatures from myth and fantasy, it's important just to go a little bit fantastical with it. ZBrush is really good for concepting things quickly because it gives you such an instant result, and it's lovely. It's just one of my favorite tools, and I think many of our students and many modelers, at least biological modelers and creature modelers and stuff like that, will agree. You can also see here, I'm on the back of my head, I'm pulling out a bit of a neck, and this is just so we have something to, work with later to add our neck into it. Yes?
A few comments from the chat. So first we have Nonsense asking, how do I get rid of the replicates? Every time I pull on the left, it will happen to the right too.
Oh, you mean your symmetry?
Yeah.
So you can press X on your keyboard to turn it off.
Yeah.
But when you're just doing the basic shapes and stuff like that, I would always start with it on. It's only later when we're into detailing and doing like tertiary, third level details, that's when we turn it off, because everything in life has, or biology on Earth has something called the bilateral symmetry, where pretty much everything that evolved on Earth is symmetrical bilaterally, but we'll have a little bit of variation. Tigers will have the stripes different. Human faces will be like, we'll have a little bit of a skew, either because of things that happen to us in life or because of things that just random mutations, random growths. Like you probably can't see it on me, any of you, but my septum is actually crooked, but that's because I've had my nose broken so many times.
Another question from Sarah saying, I have a double brush.
A double brush.
And how do you zoom out?
Control left click out in the gray area or right click anywhere else.
Fantastic. And then last question. If it was a normal day for you, Kjell, how long would something like this take you to create one of these?
Depends on what I'm using it for.
Gotcha.
So that depends on the purpose. So if I'm making something for a video game, it would take longer because I need to go through multiple steps after creating it. If I would do it for like miniature sculpts, where I sculpt for a miniature company, I would do it fairly quickly, but that's also because I don't need to worry about a lot of the tertiary details, because the tertiary details won't show up when you're printing things in 8 centimeter heights.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, and also Sarah is changing. She meant, I meant the replicate thing. Might be a little bit of a...
oh, the symmetry?
I think so.
X.
X. There we go.
But symmetry is your friend right now. It'll become less of a friend later.
Absolutely. And Samathis is just adding on to about your whole asymmetrical, saying our face and body halves also grow separately from each other, so we're always a little crooked.
Exactly. And then there are some animals that will mess with that entire, what is it called, that entire paradigm, because you have things like flounders, flailfisk, which then are not symmetrical. But interestingly enough, they follow the Fibonacci sequence. So they still follow the rules of nature. They just don't follow that specific one.
So I hope Chad is learning something new today, that's for sure. Thank you.
These are just weird things you figure out when studying for creating a creature. All right. So I have what I feel like will be my base chicken part of the sculpt, or like for the main shapes. So now I'm looking a bit more into the seahorse, and I'm looking what parts of it do I want to incorporate from here. Now, do feel free to deviate from what I do. It's not interesting if we all do the same thing. And I like these crests upon its head, but I think if I move this up, we're gonna lose the chicken. Maybe not. Maybe. Comes a little bit creepy human-like. Yeah, no, don't like that. So I'm just gonna undo that. Then let's look what we can do instead. Well, we can probably elongate the head a bit. Yes, let's do that. Elongate it, get some seahorse curvature on it. That would be great. There we go. And once I got the overall basic shapes down, I'm going to make my brush smaller, because now I'm going to start going in, I'm going to define the first of what we call bony landmarks. And these are where in humans and animals the bones are as close to the skin as possible. So for humans, this is your cheekbones, because these are pretty much right up against the skin, and your jawline. And for a lot of animals, these will be the starting points of your bony landmarks. So I'm going to start with my jawbone, also because seahorses have this very pronounced jawbone, this here. So I'm going to go to where I want my jaw, and I'm going to pull my geometry back, because now you can see I'm getting this nice border that's catching a little bit of light, a little bit of shadow, to create what's going to become my jaw. And after I have created the shape of my jaw, I'm then going to go down the snout, or the nose, because then I want this jaw to continue fairly organically down the snout. And this will also give us the added benefit of having that flat seahorse mouth. All right. Since none of our creatures have a nose, I'm going to try and do away with this little bump here that looks like a nose. Oh, am I gimbal locked again? I might be. I am gimbal locked. Oh no. Just gotta move this out of the way. Gimbal locking will help or happen. Don't panic. All right. So, in case you, like me, get this weird snout, this nose that you don't like, before I said we had 13 brushes and not the 12 we have here, the 13th one is hidden on our shift keys. This will turn our brush into a smooth brush, and this will smooth out parts of our geometry. This will also delete details later on. So later on, it sort of becomes halfway between a blending mode and a eraser. All right. So I'm just defining the top ridge here. And so because ZBrush is so quick, don't be afraid to try out something. If you're not sure if something will work, just try it out and then undo it afterwards, because we have the power of the undo with us that traditional clay sculptors don't have. So we can use this to try things out without having to waste hours and hours of work. We can just do this. And this is actually working out really nice. I like this ridge, this square looking top ridge. And then I'm gonna move it up a little bit once we reach sort of the main part of the head, the skull. And this is going to start giving me eyebrow ridges. Is everybody following along so far? Yeah, there's a question online.
So a few questions. These are more technical.
Yep.
So the first one is from Christopher saying, my polygon showing a bit. How do I make mine more smooth?
We will get to that later.
Oh, okay, because a lot of them are saying also,
So
I'm having the same issue.
Yeah, don't worry too much about it. You will have polygons stretching at this point. Yeah, I'll just let everybody catch up and I'll show what it is that happens. So, if we press Shift and F, you don't need to do this, I'm just showing some things. You can now see how many polygons we have. And it's a good idea to stay as low poly for as long time as possible, because this makes it easier to work with the general shapes. Your details won't mean anything if your general shapes aren't good. So, if we hold down Shift and we smooth, you can now see I'm subdividing and I'm actually decimating our polygons into becoming a lot more dense. This is nice because this means that area is now smoother, but it also means it becomes more difficult to manipulate with the move brush. We're not having as much of an area of effect. We're more or less just moving very locally compared to what we would be before. So, even though it might seem like I want a good result now, I want it to be pretty now, it would be a good idea to just breathe and then allow the process to take you there. You will get to a point where it's smooth, where it's beautiful. We are going to refine all the shapes into something. Don't worry.
And the last question that is technical is from Mina Madsen asking, is there a way to center the object?
Yes.
I keep accidentally moving.
If we press F on our keyboards, this will center the object. This is F for focus. And we can even zoom further out and then press F, it'll bring it back. It's just focusing whatever we have selected right now. Let me just lubricate my voice. All right, so I'm going to move, again, I've made my brush smaller, so I'm going to move up a little bump here in front of the eyebrows. This is going to be the nose, because I do want to keep a lot of the chicken in there, and moving it with the nose is and doing that with the nose will help, because we can see like the nose is halfway down the beak. This one even has like a little fleshy bit. I think this one does as well. This is beautiful. So yeah, so even with my AI generated pictures, you can see the nostrils are down here. I don't want to do that. I want them up here. I want them all the way up here on the nose. So I'm making my little nose bump. And this one I am actually going to use my smooth brush to just smooth out, because I want this to be a nice fleshy bit. All right. Let's look. I feel like there's something here I liked. Oh yes, I do like this. I like this. I like this, the beak coming out of the mouth. So I sort of want to try and get that in there now, because now we're working on more refined, we're working on smaller shapes. So I can take the front here of my mouth and I can pull that out. I know I'm destroying that flat seahorse shape that I said I liked before, but I really like this. And this also gives us an opportunity of actually doing an open mouth creature for once. So here we go. Yeah, a little bit of itty bitty seahorse mouth. Beautiful. And now it looks like the eyes should be here, but no, eyes are going to be up here. I just want this to be a little bit, not smoother, but I want it to be a more natural transition. I don't want too many bulges on here. Both chickens and seahorses are very streamlined creatures, so I want to sort of try and keep that streamlined thing. And this is sort of also what I'm talking about. Even though I made the bump earlier for the nose, now that I'm trying things out, I'm trying this beak mouth instead. I can see, well, I like the beak mouth better than I like the nose bump, so I'm going to give up on the nose bump. Maybe it will come back later. For now, I'm going with the beak mouth first. That's going to be my main focus. So yeah. And I'm going to make it a wee bit slimmer than what Midjourney gave me, because I still want the seahorse in there. There we go. That is an important part of the process. When you're making a creature, you should always make the sound it makes. It's the same thing with animators. They will always do something uncomfortable with an animation rig to make it move funny. Yes? Questions online?
First one is more like a statement from Kuchi saying, mine looks less like a seahorse and more like an angry chicken.
Well.
And then we have two questions from kind of asking the same, is how did you carve the mouth in?
I didn't carve the mouth in, so I still have not gone on from our move brush.
Fantastic.
So what I did is I pulled all the geometry back, and then I also pulled the geometry back on the inside. So even though we have symmetry on, the symmetry we have in the move brush we have here is not infinite. So when you grab something, it's only what you can see, and then the corresponding thing on the other side that will be shown, or that will be grabbed. So you still have parts on the inside of the mouth that won't be shown or grabbed. So you gotta just make sure that everything's grabbed at the same time. But yeah, I just used my move brush to, move the mouth out. And then I used the smooth brush afterwards. If you were getting that weird stretching, I just held down Shift and used the smooth brush to remove it.
Fantastic. And then the last question would be from Kiwi Finn. It's more like a follow-up for when we're talking about when you were, depending on what kind of project you were doing.
Yeah.
Kiwi Finn is asking, so if you were creating a creature in the gaming world, would that be a day or a week, or do you create the whole world or specific elements, or both?
Well, this is again a two-part question. Am I giving concept? That will take longer time for me, and I think for most people, which sounds kind of intuitive. If somebody gives me a piece of concept art and tells me I need to make this, well, then I need to make sure that it looks exactly like that. And following a different artist's vision and style can take longer time unless that is, your natural workflow, what you're always doing. Because if you practice something enough, doesn't matter what it is, you'll get fast and you'll get good at it. So, but if I'm doing something myself, like when I do my own miniatures and things like that, it's fairly quickly. But then a different, like sculpting the base creature for a miniature takes about 4 hours. That will be start to finish, I'll be done. But then I need to pose it. And posing it takes longer time, mostly because ZBrush's poser, full ZBrush's poser isn't great. And then I need to do something called keying, which has nothing to do with animation, but it's splitting up the model so that it can be printed in a way that won't that will need the least amount of supports and allow you for the most amount of accuracy. So that's splitting up arms, splitting up legs, splitting up tongues, things like that, but then putting in a little block that will then fit into a hole on where it needs to be glued into. That takes a bit more time, and that's mostly because I haven't optimized my own workflow, because I could just make a tool and then do that, but I haven't sat down for the 20 minutes and done it, and it's cost me hours and hours of work. But I think everybody has it like that. I could just automate this, but I haven't. So. All right, here we go. I'm just smoothing things out. And then, so now I'm gonna try, I want to start defining the nostrils, and I want to start defining the ears, because I know where my eyes are gonna do, and because of the limitations of ZBrush Core Mini, I'm not gonna make them yet, but we are gonna get to them, don't worry. So I'm gonna try out a few nostril placements, and the way I'm gonna do this is still with my move brush. I'm gonna hold down Alt on my keyboard, and if you try this, you'll realize that your move brush is now locked to just moving in and out, because this is the alternate function of the move brush. And all brushes have an alternate function. And what it does is it will take your selection, and then based on that, it will move it in and out on your selection's angle. So I don't like that. So let's move that. I like it up here. I still like it a tall nostril, a far up nostril. Yeah, let's do this. And then I'm gonna shape this nostril a little bit with my move brush still. It's not, still doesn't need to be fully finished. I just want it to be sort of like have it space reserved on the face, so I'm not going to come in there and put extra details on there later. I want this space reserved for now. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the ears. Where are chicken ears? I think they're up here somewhere. This is the chicken ear. So I want it here. Smooth that out. I need more geometry. And then let's make a chicken ear, which is apparently just a fold. Guessing it's that. Do seahorses have ears? I don't think so. Oh, poor chicken. All right. So, last little tweaks here and there. When I say the basic shapes are the most important part, it is because when we start putting details on this, and we suddenly realize we actually want to change a basic shape, we will ruin our details, and we don't want to do that. If we make something, if we do details, we'd like details to be permanent. All right, let's just move you in. This is the way. Move this in. And I'm going to get a little bit. So for creatures, if they need to swallow things, you need to have your esophagus, your throat tube, So I want to make sure that my throat tube actually comes out here. I'm just going to do like this. And yes, I'm getting some polygon stretching. No, I do not care at this point. There we go. Because this goes very nice. We have, oh, I don't remember the first. It's something mastoid. The giant, we have these big tendons going down our throat here. They'll go down and then, yeah, exactly those. You're a really good example of it because yours are very pronounced. My dad bod's starting to hide mine. But yeah, we have these two big tendons going down here, and I'd sort of made them subconsciously, but they're really good to have in there because they're, if you have a neck and you need to move it around on a ball joint, then this is sort of necessary. It also helps us with a lot of other things. And just gonna smooth out the bumpiness. Gonna smooth out a little bit in here so it doesn't get so stretched. And there we go. All right, so let me just, let everybody catch up a little bit. Do we have any more questions online? We'll let people catch up and then we're gonna go into actual sculpting brushes.
More just like statements. We have Frederick saying, I can imagine that you would just spend endless of hours doing this. I see why people love sculpting.
Yeah. I think before ZBrush was bought up by Maxon, like their biggest customer base were hobbyists that were buying the program and then using it for hobby purposes. Back when that was affordable. So yeah, it is a wonderful software.
Absolutely. And then one question is that if you go online, ZBrush seems quite expensive to buy both annually or monthly, and the free version has a limited poly count. Is there any other alternative to Sculpt?
Yes, so Blender has a sculpting mode. It's not as comprehensive as full ZBrush. It will be as good at, well, ZBrush Core Mini still has some functionality that will be better, but you can technically sculpt in Blender. It's just not as good. If you have an iPad, you can get the software called Forger or Nomad Sculpt. I personally have had good responses from my hobbyist friends doing Nomad Sculpt, who say they like it a lot. But it is noted that you're pretty much locked to a sculpting thing. You can't actually use what you sculpt unless you take it through Blender first or afterwards. So, was that it? Wonderful. All right. So, up in the top right-hand corner, we have our standard brush and our clay buildup brushes. These are pretty similar brushes in function, but they have one key difference. Our standard brush is this nice round brush that'll like automatically smooth itself with whatever's next to it. Some people really like that. And our clay buildup is harder. It's as if it doesn't have a smooth function. It is just a complete hard what's it called? Brush. It's alpha. Its focal shift is hard. And whether you like to use one or the other is a preference thing. There's also situational things where you would use one over the other, but it is just a preference thing. And there is a little bit of religious debate which one is better, but it's, yeah, use whichever one you prefer. Try out both. Don't take my word as gospel with this. Because like I said, I like to use clay buildup. And the reason why I like to use clay buildup is you get a lot of nice little accidents. It's what Bob Ross always said, you get a lot of happy little accidents. And these happy little accidents are little details, little shapes that are really nice. And I feel like you get a lot more of them with the clay buildup than you do with your with the standard brush. So I use clay buildup for pretty much everything. There's very rarely I'll use the standard brush for this level of sculpting. So I'm just gonna go over a few of my bony landmarks, and I'm gonna redefine them here. And then, because I like these ridges, these hard shapes we're getting on the outside, I don't want them on the inside. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold down Shift, and I'm gonna smooth out the inside. And you can see there's this nice transition between my clay buildup and my cheeks. All right, let's move around here, see if we can get anything interesting. Some eyes would be interesting. Yeah, let's make him real bug-eyed, shouldn't we? So, I'm gonna take a big brush size. I'm gonna start sculpting where I want my eyes to be. Now, I do want this area flat, again, because of ZBrush Core Mini's limitations. Then I want this area flat, but I'm still gonna take it out. And this has a dual purpose. I want it to be, dragons are predators in my mind. So they need front-facing eyes. So I want my eyes to be front-facing as well, and I can do that by sort of sculpting this out and making sure that it gets real bug-eyed. There we go. Get real smooth. There, I like that. We're really getting both the chicken and the seahorse. Like, this eye is buggy. And this eye is big, it's lovely. I think this actually looks really nice. All right. Oh, I have an interesting topic for the chat today, actually. That is, how many legs can a dragon have? Do they fall, and whether or not we should go into the whole dragon purist discussion, because I love that discussion. It is amazing.
Should I do a poll?
How many legs do dragons have? Yeah.
Yeah, and then so what should be the...
How many legs do dragons have? 2, 0, any amount, or 4?
All right, 2...
And this is legs, not wings, legs.
Gotcha.
And then I'll give you a history lesson afterwards.
So how many legs?
It is. We'll take it on the pot. How many legs do dragons have? Well, arms and legs are sort of interchangeable. It depends on the joint. Like elephants don't have knees; they only have elbows.
Actually?
Yeah, it's because the way of the whole mechanics, the biomechanical of so. Mito, my beautiful assistant, was asking, "What about arms?" for the whole dragon question, and the reality of it is, depending on how the joints are set up and the purpose of what it is you have or you're using it for, changes what it is. And one of those weird things is elephants don't have knees. They only have elbows because the joints are built up like elbows and not like knees. I'm getting some weird looks here from the classroom, and I love it.
There's just a quick technical question while we're getting the polls in.
Yep.
There is one from Gator saying, I need to see if I understand it correctly. He's using Claire standard brushes tend to make very aggressive lines on my chicken mutant. Is there a way to adjust the softness?
No. Well, yes, but no. So you have this set intensity. This is how strong your brush will, like how much effect it will have. This will give you like sort of a softer effect, but you'll also be manipulating things a lot softer or a lot less. And for anybody who wants to reset theirs back to standard, it's 20. But you can also just do smooth over things on your mesh, like so. And the bigger your smooth brush is, the more it will destroy. Let me show you a good example. Here, see very dense. Have a very small smooth brush, it'll create even denser. Big smooth brush, destroy.
All right, you think the chat has gotten enough time for...
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Wait a minute, being asked a question. Yeah.
Is it possible to change the brush that when you press shift?
No.
So what if it does? Is that just a reset?
Shift is smooth.
Yeah, well, what if it's randomly clay buildup? Is it just a reset?
What?
Yeah.
What?
Another question. Can you change the keybinds?
Not in ZBrush Core Mini.
Then we have a problem there.
Yeah, but this has happened before. Yeah, so somebody managed to change their smooth brush to something else, and that shouldn't be possible. But it's not the first time I've experienced issues like this, because, so here's the funny thing about ZBrush Core Mini. It is full ZBrush hidden behind a UI. So all your brushes and everything is in there. You just can't access it the normal way. I've had people at the bootcamp access brushes that you shouldn't be able to access, which is super fun
That's
because you
cool.
just shouldn't be able to.
Oh well, you love a good glitch in the system.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna run up a few things here before
Yeah.
we do the poll. So
Yeah.
Kuye said, I'm very fond of Dark Souls 1's Gaping Dragons that has 6 to 8 legs.
Yes, that's a good design for dragons as well.
Yes. Some of them actually gave their vote in the chat. So someone said 4. Frederick said 4 legs. 2 legs is a wyvern. Somebody said 1. It's a crippled dragon, a pogo dragon. Somebody said half of a leg. But the poll, we're having... Okay, so 4% said none. 19% said 2. 30% said more than 4. And 48 said 4 legs.
All right. So the whole definition of dragons having 4 legs and that whole dragon elitism thing coming out was actually Tolkien who started that. Because Tolkien was very particular about his dragons. He says there's only 2 real dragons in myth and history, and that is Fafnir and Nidhogg from Nordic mythology, because they have 4 legs and 2 wings. But that comes with the misconception, because they're not dragons, they're lindworms. And the translations and the Christianizations turned them into dragons, and lindworms had anywhere between none and 6 limbs. So, and if you ask, I have a friend who is a literary scholar, and he says the most defining characteristic of a dragon in a story is that it's important. That's actually the defining part of a dragon, is that it's important for the story.
Gotcha.
Also, Tolkien would have ripped his eyeballs out and thrown them at the screen, looking at Smaug from The Hobbit, because he was big on dragons have 4 legs. 4 legs and 2 wings, that's a dragon.
Jesus.
So, but yeah, the Gaping Dragon from Dark Souls is also interesting because they follow a different design philosophy in the East, where dragons are different, but then they're looking at Western European dragons for inspiration, but mixing it in with their own. Super interesting design language and design process in general.
There we go. Yeah, we're having in the chat saying, Zanartis is saying, looking forward to the history lesson, and he said, yeah, mostly Chinese dragons is these sorts of
yeah, because they're based on carps, deer, and tigers, while European dragons are like lions, big cats, things like that, and lizards and cats. And like just simple household cats, you'll see a lot of dragons based on that.
Wow, cats?
Hmm? The front leg structure is cats most of the time.
Oh, the moderator is also learning new things today.
Oh, I could go. I am a big dragon nerd. I love dragons, and I can go on for years about it. So, all right. Yes.
Have you played God of War?
I have not. All right. So last thing I'm going to do with my clay build-up brush here, I was doing it before, but I realized I wasn't narrating it, so I've undone all my work, is I'm going to create 2 muscles on the neck. I'm going to create one here behind the jaw, and this one's going to go down. It's going to follow our tendon about halfway down, and then it's going to disappear in our tendon here. And if this sort of makes your this ridge in here disappear, we can either undo it so we can keep it and we can go back down, or we can sculpt over it, and then like we did with the move brush where we could hold down Alt to get the alternate function, if we hold down Alt, we can carve into our mesh instead of adding to it. So now we're subtracting instead of adding mesh or geometry to our model. So I want to add this muscle up here. And then I want to add, it's not a complete, but it's like a faux shoulder joint or a shoulder muscle that I want to have come over this. So this is where I would imagine the head connects to the body. Of course, if yours has a longer neck, if you don't want this to be a shoulder muscle, then don't. Then we can actually add a little bit of human clavicle to it here. Go up. Want to keep those tendons. And some of you might have realized I'm doing very small, very quick movements. And that's because I might, like if I'm doing a big movement, if I do all of this and this up here looks bad, now I need to do everything over again. If I then just build up, build down in small, quick movements all the time, just very sketchy, this allows me to very quickly iterate on my movements and on my brush strokes. Instead of having to do large controlled ones, I can do a lot of small uncontrolled ones, and just whenever something I do I don't like, I can undo it very quickly and not lose a lot of time and or work. So we can do like this. You can see really getting that in. And this is also a thing I really like about the clay build-up brush. When you're doing muscle definition like this, you're getting that sort of medical journal muscle fiber tissue feel to it, and that looks really nice. I actually had somebody buy a model off me where I was just at the sketching phase, but they liked it so much at that point because of this muscle fiber thing that it was just, well, that's it. That's what we want. It's like, you sure? It's just 2 hours of work. This is for the first revision. You sure you want this? Yeah, give it to me. So it has that added benefit, which is really nice. All right, just going in, adding definition. If I want something to be a little bit tighter, we can see now we're starting to get into secondary shapes, secondary details. We're starting to make these more defining, or not defining, we're starting to flesh out flat areas so that they look more interesting, more visually attractive. And so there's also, so here's the thing, if you want to start creating things for like realism, we need to start to think about muscle structure, and that is sort of this. Now this doesn't actually work, but it looks like it will work, and that's good enough for the viewer. And that's, again, what are you making something for a, like if you're making a movie purely for CG artists to look at, you got to make sure everything's perfect. But there's not a big part of the world's population that are CG artists, so you can get away with a lot of things that don't actually work and don't actually look that well. Like here, I'm just adding a bunch of muscle definition in here. Now this will actually work because this is to open and close the jaw, and we like that. It's nice to be able to chew. So we want this, we want the bony landmark to still be there, but then we want a muscle to sort of bulge out from there because it anchors on the inside of your jaw, and it doesn't, a lot of animals as well. So you'll have bone close to skin, and you'll have a jaw muscle actually hinging on the inside of this bone, and then going up to meet with the main part of the skull. It's just creating a little bit of a bump. Like this. Good. We can even, if we want to, we can add a little bit of extra interest or tissue here. I'm going to smooth this out. See, when we smooth this out, we're getting a lot of these happy little mistakes from the clay buildup brush. We're getting these little inconsistencies in the surface that look as if you looked at like bodybuilders or when they've done those experiments with growth hormones on animals, you'll sort of see a lot of the muscles poking through, or not poking through the skin. That would be horrifying. But you're seeing that the skin is tight over every muscle fiber. And that's sort of what we want to do here because, I mean, fat dragons are cool, but they're very rare. So, yes, questions?
So a few statements and some technical questions. I'll start with the technical questions. Mina Madsen is saying, I don't know if I just made my model too small, but your clay brush seems so much flatter than mine. Is there a way to scale
So
the
much
entire
flatter?
thing? Yeah, I think it might be maybe some intensity.
You're using a mouse and you have pressure sensitivity on yours, so they have to.
I don't. I've turned mine off.
You have?
I don't use pressure sensitivity. Okay, so the question is, yeah. So mine, if mine is, Mito was answering the question saying that I have pressure sensitivity on. I don't. I generally don't work with it. I know that there's a few of my colleagues who are probably screaming at me right now, but I don't like. I like controlling the intensity here. You can try and up your intensity. You probably, if you're working with a mouse, then that will probably, this is the way you control your things and will be the way you like control how much effect your different tools have. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Next question is there any way to smooth out an area without increasing poly counts?
Not in ZBrush Core Mini. So ZBrush Core Mini has a function called Sculptris Pro on by default. And that is this decimating function that we were talking about earlier. And this means we have a bit more freedom. We don't need to do this manually, but it comes with the point that our poly count will get very high very quickly. So sadly not. If you think, I was actually going to wait until this came up naturally, but let me just force it. If I can, will you allow me to force it, please? All right, I'm just going to force this quickly. There we go. Yeah, so at some point you're going to get this warning. This is ZBrush Core Mini saying, please buy the full version because this is a marketing stunt. You don't need to. Just click the reduce. So the reduce button has this lovely functionality of analyzing your mesh, and it takes a few seconds, but it analyzes your mesh and sees which areas have a lot of detail and which areas have a little detail. And then it's going to repurpose geometry and repurpose faces and active polygons from your high detail or from your low detail area that might be high poly to your high detailed areas. So you don't lose detail, you just lose polygons.
And a last technical question here from Frederick is saying, I feel like my clay brush is way more aggressive than yours, even though it looks like we have the same intensity and brush size. Any idea why?
No, that does sound weird. Maybe I do have pressure sensitivity on, I shouldn't have. But then again, this isn't my Wacom board, so.
Yeah. And then just a few statements here. Fuzzy Melox, I don't know if it's a compliment to you or your dragon, is saying, sick muscles, bro.
Yep, it doesn't skip jaw day.
And Sarah says is saying, my Drago is looking very beefy now. So
yeah,
it's all good. Oh, there's a last question here, and then I'll shut my mouth. There's can you open a Blender object in ZBrush and then export it back into Blender?
Not in ZBrush Core Mini. Oh wait, no, we can't. But what we can do is we can export this as an OBJ, and we'll, depending on how long time the Dragon State takes, I'll take you through the initial steps of going through what's called a retopologizing, and that is the next step in the process of a sculpt. Unless you're doing miniature design, you will always need to do a retop. That doesn't matter if you're doing it for movies or if you're doing it for games. Always. So, all right. I think we have enough muscle definition. And yeah, so if you want to make sure you don't get the warning every time, we have these 3 buttons in the top called low, mid, and high. And these will reduce your poly count. I'm just going to set mine to low. So right now mine is on 400,000 polygons. I'm going to set it to low, which is going to turn it down to 150, or as close to 150 as it can. And you'll see I don't actually lose any detail. This function is really useful and really good. So don't be afraid of utilizing it because, well, it doesn't really change anything. And a lot of the time the workflow, so back to the whole Blender to ZBrush thing. Full ZBrush you can do it, yes, but ZBrush Core Mini you can't. Most often you would go ZBrush Blender. If you're doing hard surface objects, you would likely go Blender ZBrush, but that's also overkill completely. There's no reason to make a barrel in ZBrush. It's difficult, and I wouldn't advise it for anybody. All right, so we got muscle definition, we got muscles, we got secondary details. Let us work on some more secondary details, but this time differently. So I have some seahorses down here. I have this one for a very particular reason. I like these horns. These are nice. And I want to start getting some of those in there. And it's sort of to both keep the seahorse and the chicken language in there, because the chickens also have this mohawk thing. And I want that to get in there, but I want it to have sort of this spiky feel. So next to our move brush, we have the snake hook brush. And the snake hook brush is sort of like our move brush, but it is a lot more aggressive. We can pull out a lot more geometry with it. It doesn't let go of our geometry when we do it, or when we use it. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to pull out horns. Now let me look at this thing. Horns go backwards. So we're going to have it go up and back. I don't like those. Maybe a bit bigger. Nope, too big. Too big. There we go. Up and back. They're going to be very two-dimensional, and when I say two-dimensional, I mean they're going to go straight back. So we might want to go in and use the regular move brush to move them out to the sides and have a little bit more dynamic feel to them. I'm just going to use a big size here. I'm going to go move them out, move them out. There, 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 there. And I don't mind having too much of like waviness in them, because we can always fix that later. I just want to make sure that they're sort of in the right direction and have the right angle to them. I think it needs to be a little bit more extreme. There we go. And then I'm going to go back to my snake hook because I want to make more. I want to make 2 smaller ones here. Do them like so. Move them out a little bit, move them back, move them up. I know there are some ZBrush artists who really like using the snake hook brush as their move tool, which seems a little bit weird with the way I'm using it, but that's because I'm not in that school of practice. But if you have it at a fairly big size, you can actually use it to move things around. And there are people who really like this, but like with the standard and the clay buildup brush, it's a religious thing. Which one do you like more? So, and that's for you to figure out. Which one do you like most for your workflow? There's not a right or a wrong way, especially not with ZBrush, because it is really as close to a artistic process as you will get. So there's no reason why you should limit yourself to somebody else's process when your own process will work better for you. There are some things that will go again that doesn't matter which ZBrush artist you talk to. Most of them will say start with the big shapes and then, you know, redefine the details later. Don't go directly into detailing. That's just the way to paint. So here, moving things in, moving things out, checking what I like. Here we go. This is going to be beautiful. It's going to be amazing. These things are so thin, they would snap off right away. All right. There we go. Should we do a center one? Let's try. Let's do one of these boys. Now we can have like the central mohawk thing. We can even have a little, oh, we could do like a few nubbly ones here. They'll come up and sort of grow up into this. Oh, this looks good. And see, that was, I didn't plan that. I didn't practice that. That was a, oh, I wonder if this looks good. And if you ever have those moments, follow them. See where they take you. Because you know what? It's only an undo if you don't like it. Boop, 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 ba-doop, ba-doop. I hear some laughing around. That's good. It means people are having fun. We'll get to the real cursed stuff in a moment, don't worry. Swish. Get that little bit of streamlining in there. Yep. All right. So now I have made my horns in the placement I want them. This one's a bit wonky, but that's okay. Let's move here, move in there. So, like I said before, these are very thin. They're going to snap off immediately. So we are going to find the brush called Inflate. It's up in the left-hand corner, second row, to the left. And the Inflate brush will take the geometry we already have and blow it up like a balloon. And this means we can take things we have shapes defined, and we can sort of blow them up. This also has the added function of smoothing out some of those like a bit more wonky, bubbly shapes in case you have those and you don't like them. So that is very, very nice. And then we can go in and define them in whatever way we want to afterwards. Just beef this out a little bit. Even use it to like make it a little nicer transition here. Beef this out a little bit. Here we go. Beef this out. Transition. Very nice. You're seeing this, I'm making this little transition up. So in my head, I imagine these spines to have something hard inside them, but they're covered by skin, which means they need to have this little stretchy skin transition up from the skin of the head into the horny bits. That sounds wrong. Yo, and something you might also notice, the Inflate brush doesn't actually make more geometry. And if we hold down Alt, the Inflate brush will sort of turn into this hole making thing that is really nice. If we want to redefine our ears or nostrils, there's a hand, yes.
It's just some great statements from the chat. Let's go with the first one. Mina Madsen saying, not sure how my funky guy survived evolution. Kuye is saying, mine reportedly looks like a chicken cleric. And Matthias is saying, my chicken was born with horrible birth defects.
Yep.
And then there's just a little question, can you deflate as well?
Yes, so if we hold down Alt, this will deflate.
There we go.
Yeah. Watch out though, because it can create horrors like this, where things will just go into itself.
So, And I tried to be nice to people with all the saying chicken cleric and how it survives. I was trying to say that trust me, somewhere in another multiverse, your dragon, chicken, seahorse is roaring through the skies or dominating the ocean.
Yeah.
And someone said my chicken looks like someone that really hates Christmas.
Oh, you made me. Yeah, I'm a bit of a Grinch. I don't like Christmas. So yeah, you made me. All right. All right, just gonna use a small smooth brush because I want to add some more geometry to these horns before we start defining them even more. There we go. You can see with a small smooth brush, I'm not actually taking that much away. I am just making more geometry that I can work with, which is really nice. Whee! Whee! All right. Because now we can start adding a little bit of like, more of like scratching details. We want some wear and we want some tear, especially on that beak. We want to get back into, not this boy, we want to get back into this boy. Look at this. Perspective is horrible on that though, but you know. So we have two tools that will help us a lot with defining these sharp bony shapes that we'll have on beaks and bone and horn and stuff like that. The first one being our pinch brush that's right next to our inflate. This will allow us to like take all the geometry and then pull it towards itself or each other. Do be warned, if you take it to some place that's too thin, you'll grab everything and then it'll sort of destroy your shapes. So you gotta make sure that you're working in areas that have enough geometry, that have enough spacing for this to work properly. Or you're using a small enough brush that you won't be grabbing the back side of your mesh. So here you can see we're defining that hard edge of the top or of the bottom of the beak. Creating that really nicely. And we can make it a bit bigger and we can sort of go to the top of the beak and make this ridge. Nice defining ridge. What are you? Oh! That's interesting. So here we can really define, and get this nice sharp ridge on the top of the beak. All right. And next tool, where are you? There. So we can use our H polish. It's here, right under snake hook. And this will flatten things out for you. This is really good if you're going for like a more stylized look. You can start flattening out the planes of faces. You can get a very stylized look. Depending on your workflow, it might be nicer to use it before the pinch brush or afterwards. I tend to flip-flop between them to get the result I want. Let's see, this gets nice and flat. You can also use it to flatten out other parts if they are not the shapes we want them to be, but we didn't realize before. Like this part of the beak, we want it to go further this way. That part can be outward, but there we go. Whoop. And this is also really nice if you sort of lost some planes or some shapes and you want to redefine them. Like I lost the top of my eyebrows here at some point. I want to sharpen that up. I can use the H polish to do that. It's really nice if you're doing faces, blocking out a face with the sculpt and the move tools, and then starting to define the face and the planes of the face with the H polish. It's just a wonderful feeling because you really get a fairly decent result fairly quickly. Then I'm gonna go back to my pinch. I'm just gonna pinch some things, make them thinner, make them nicer. You can even use the pinch brush to sculpt a little bit. I wouldn't advise it, but you can. There we go. Nice chicken dragon. right. And yeah, that's very nice. The last brush we're going to go through before we get to the intensive projections and displacements is the slash brush. Now, the slash brush does exactly like you would imagine a slash brush does. It slashes into your geometry. And this can be really nice to define like folds. It can also be nice if you want to define something going around a shape. So if we have these skin things here, I'm holding down Alt, and this is now allowing me to make this super, super slim a sinew? I don't really know what to call it actually. Skin lifting off. That looks super good. But we can also use it if we want to make like some wrinkles. Nice wrinkles under the eyes here. It's nice. Just want a little bit of that like heavy skin. It looks tired. Which I read a funny thing today is like peak character design in modern media. Make them tired and in boring clothes and then give them earrings. That apparently is just peak modern character design. Yeah. Oh no, what is it? Adam, our education leader here, who also teaches some things, is so funny. So we're talking to my assistant Christian's class the other day, or the other month last year, and he was talking about character design. And when everything else fails, make a 30-something white dude because kids love 30-something white dudes with issues. And then he listed off 60 games that had that as their protagonist. You have God of War, you have what is it got? Beyond Good and Evil, Red Dead Redemption. And it was really disheartening to see that is apparently what everybody loves.
I mean, just all new publishers, which is like either it's a crime or it's like an action game or some sort of. Then it's like middle aged, 30-something
white dude.
It like super Western looking and something like that, and then black or brown hair.
Yeah, kids love that.
Kids freaking love that. Oh, and one thing from the chat, Kuye is saying, "Oh man, the L functionality of slash is what I was missing from my life all this time."
Yeah.
And then Koya is saying, "Don't call me out like that."
I'm almost in that category myself. Next year, I'm gonna be in it. I'm gonna be 30-something and
right behind you, buddy. Right behind you.
All right. How it looking? Oh, let's create a little more detail around the nostril. I'm actually gonna go super small with my brush. I'm just gonna create a little bit of tension around here, a little bit of interest. Not that I want it to be a focus point, but I do want it to be there. Can even add like a little extra fold, smooth it out. This is a little bit extreme. Let's delete that. There we go. Oh, I like this shape. This is nice. This is a happy little accident. Getting that in there. And these look good. These nice biological folds on top of each other. Yep. All right. So you can see I'm getting pretty close to my 750,000 limit. I'm just going to take mine down to low by clicking low up in the top, middle. So top is fine, I guess. And then we're going to get into the last 4 brushes we have access to. Now the last 4 brushes we have are projection brushes. They will project predefined details onto our meshes. Now, because we're working in ZBrush Core Mini, normally what you would do to make an eye is you would have a separate geometry piece as your eyeball. We can't do that because we only have access to one piece of geometry, so that kind of limits us. But in our chisel creature Chisel 3D and Chisel Organic brushes, these three, we have eyeballs that we can use, that predefined projections that we can get the shape of an eye with. And this is sort of why I left the eye area so flat, because these things need flat areas to work properly. This is also where we're getting into nightmare fuel, because we can add human eyes to these things. And this is brilliant. I love it. So I'm going to go into Chisel 3D. That's the one I always start with, because it's the simplest one. You can see it has about a bunch of noses and mouths and just uncomfortable things. I'm going to choose the eye 3. This is a human eye. And I'm just going to make my nightmares. And I'm pulling upwards. By the way, this might be a thing that might confuse some people every now and again. I'm pulling upwards because if we pull downwards, it's upside down. So pulling upwards to create this. Do we like that? I don't think we need to pull. I think everybody hated that. We can do I2. This is simple. I1. I1 has a bit more detail. Ooh. Hello there. Nope, let's not. Well, maybe. Let's keep that in mind. Chisel 3D, I1. I'm going to go to Chisel Creature. I'm going to look through the horns, the nostrils, the necks, the scales, until I find the eyes. So we have the same eye here, but one of them has an eyeball in it and the other one doesn't. And this means that we can actually take this and we can, when we export and pull it into Blender, we can put an eyeball in there and it'll fit. It's just doing a little bit of work for us. But it also comes with some nice detail around it. I don't hate this particularly. It's very angry. It's a very dragon, generic dragon, McDragon. Yeah. And oh yeah, so we also have chisel shapes. These are just basic shapes that we can sort of project onto our creature if we want to. If you want to have some weird eldritch horror, you could definitely do that. And the last one we have is Chisel Organic. This is the biggest one there is because it has 65 projections. Oh, sorry, 85 projections. And the way I'm navigating through this up here is just I'm left clicking and then just, you know, pulling and letting go, and this will allow it to fly by. And we have a lot of really useful things here. We have teeth, we have mouths, just like the other one. We have ears, if we want to make human ears. We have noses, animal noses, human noses, and animal mouth, eyeballs. Here we go. Let's see what we got. A bit too simple for my taste. Bit too frog for my taste. Oh, I like that. That's pure nightmare fuel. I love it. Oh, we have anime eyes. I actually think we have more. I think we have more anime eyes if we want to. We have the last one. Do I like it better reversed? No. No. We can also, oh yeah, so we can also use the Alt function, and then instead of projecting onto, we're carving into, which is great fun. Let's see, I think if we go to the end of this, yeah, we have anime eyes. Oh, no. Yeah, no, let's do this. It'll be the new Netflix special. Here, my character's yes?
Love, Death and Robots Season 4 confirmed?
Yeah, anime dragons. Who is your dragon waifu? And there's also some of them that are just called abstract. These are weird. But, you know, you can use them. That's not bad. Yeah, no, you know what? I'm gonna go back to my, do I want eyeball 1 from Chisel 3D? Look at that beautiful boy. Who, only a mother could love that face. Or do I like this one? This one makes it mean, but it is a dragon. So it should be mean, right? Shouldn't it? Yeah, let's go with this one. I don't know. They're capitalists, so. All right. So this is how we make eyeballs and eyes inside a Super Core Mini. We do want to add more things to this. Like we do want to add teeth. And again, our chisel brushes are really good for this. There's human teeth, where you have your incisors and your canines. I don't think it has molars. Those are the teeth in your back for those uninitiated. And we can use these, and let's see what... That's a weird way of projecting, but okay. Do we want teeth on the outside of the beak? I don't think we want teeth on the outside of the beak. No, we don't. So in case that doesn't work, let us look around. Let's see if we can find something that is... Yeah, you know what? Let's try this. I'm going to go into chisel shape and cone. And then I'm going to make myself some small teeth in here. Yeah. That. Apart from it going in and projecting into the bottom jaw, it's not bad. It's not horrible. It's not great, but it's not bad. Ooh. Make it a bit smaller. Yeah. This is perfect. These are the teeth we want. Well, it's not the teeth we want to be bit by, but it is definitely the teeth we want. Is it the teeth we deserve, though? Okay, you can have a little bit of divot there, I guess. Yeah, so these projection brushes, because they're projecting from where you're like taking your brush or where you're putting down your brush, it means you might project on things that are behind it, on top of it, or below it, because you're literally just projecting a picture onto it and it's deforming after it. And if that happens, just go back and fix it. Ooh! Just go back and fix it a little bit. There we go. All right. Oh, I've been asked to mention that we have a Discord that is public and anybody can join it, where they can come and chat to students, and they can come... I have recently been actually granted access to it because we were supposed to be student only. And I will, you know, you can come in, we will, if we have time and energy, we'll give you feedback. I know the students give a lot of feedback to people who join it, both from Bootcamp and from just interests. So do that. Our students are helpful and lovely, and I'm there sometimes and give feedback, which is lovely. Oh, and we really want to see your chicken seahorses. So if you could throw them in there and send them to us, that would be just lovely. All right, let's get a bit more shape on these teeth. So I'm going to pick my move brush. You can see I'm just taking the back of them, pushing them forward. Is this too much? This is too little. No, this is fine. Just doing like getting some teeth action. All right. There we go. Yeah, it's about fine. Let's see if we can find something. Also, you'll sometimes find like weird things that make good teeth. So try out the different chisel things. Oh, This is good. This ear makes the perfect teeth, which is a sentence you'll only ever hear 3D artists say. But look at that. Those are beautiful. I wish I'd used that from the start. Yeah, let's delete these. Wow. Yeah, so if you are having, like, the projections aren't working for you, go look if there's something else that will work. I know in the Chisel Organic, there's also a bunch of like insect horns and stuff like that. They might make good teeth. It's a bit, yeah, okay. That's a bit too much for my taste. Oh, beak. Yeah, that works. It's a bit warthoggy, but... And then, depending on how stylized you want to make it, make sure that the teeth don't hit each other when the creature closes its mouth. If you're going super stylized, super fantasy, creature doesn't have to close its mouth. It never does. It's always open. It's always roaring at you or spewing flames. So you can always, you know, have a little bit more creative freedom than what realism shows you. I mean, this is a chicken seahorse dragon. This doesn't exist, but my God, should it. All right, let's see, yeah. Oh, I'm just gonna go back to my slash brush. I wanna add a little bit of like surface texture to the beak here, like some scritches and scratches. Want this to look a little bit more like creatine? Chitin. No, chitin's insects. So I want this to be beak material. I can put a little bit of a border on that. I want the border to be here. I don't need to be, but it is very nice. You can even go like here. Just look at that. That's nice. All right, doing fine on my poly count. I still want this to be a little bit more defined up here. Whee! Just smoothing things out. I want the transition on this side to be smooth, but I don't want it to be smooth on the other side. There we go. Gonna reduce my poly count. There we go. Again, I don't lose a lot of detail. Don't be afraid of the reduce poly count button. It is your friend. So, I just show you a few last tricks that in case you want to, you know, up the detail level here, you can use them. Under Chisel Organic, there are, or is it under Chisel Creature? Doesn't really, it's under Chisel Creature. Yeah, Chisel Creature has these scales 1, 2, and 3. So if you want to add like a lot of scales to this, you should go from the bottom of it and then put a layer of scales next to each other like so. And then you can layer scales on top of that via this projection brush. Now, if you go from the top and project downward, what will happen is your new projection will be on top of your old ones, and that's not going to give a very nice layered effect. But we can do it from the bottom to the top. Go. I'm not too worried about the places where it overlaps. That's just going to create like a little bit of natural ugliness. And when I say that, I don't mean Hollywood ugly, I mean actual ugly. Oh, it's getting projected onto that. I don't like that. There we go. I'm going to switch to scales 2, the one that only has 3 of them on, because I want to start transitioning away from the big fields of scale and onto a smaller amount. So I don't want big scales on my face. So I'm going to also do the last few ones here, maybe a singular small one. There we go. And this is the point where if we want to make this super realistic, we press X on our keyboard, and this will turn off symmetry. So now what I do on one side will not be done on the other side. I do that scale there, it's not on the other side. And that is when we're done with like overall details, we need to start doing asymmetry to get things to look more realistic. That's when we turn off symmetry. But because most things follow bilateral symmetry, we don't want to turn it off all that quickly. Oh no, reduce. But yeah, the projection brushes will give you a lot of geometry and will do it very, very quickly. So it'll likely ask you to reduce a lot, but you know, we don't mind. See, this is adding a lot of detail very quickly to our model. Just doing these small projections. And this is very much what you would do. It's also, they did it with, who plays the Hulk in the Avengers? What's his, yeah, what's his face? Mark Ruffalo. So when they made the Hulk, when they made the 3D model, they made it in ZBrush. And they were like, oh, we want to get this as close to reality as possible. So they took a scan of like 8K or maybe even higher of Mark Ruffalo's face, and then they projected all the skin details onto the Hulk, and they were left with beautiful, beautiful skin details that are about 2 centimeters apart because the Hulk's face is 3 times as big as Mark Ruffalo's. So they then had to start copying parts of his face onto his face again. Yeah. What's up?
I have 2 questions for you. First one is from Sarah, just quickly regarding ZBrush. How did you get the scales?
Chisel creature, and then they should be up at the top. There's scale 1, 2, and 3.
Fantastic. And then Gator has a question saying, just a thought, would it be possible to make a detailed figure in ZBrush and then create a texture to use as bump maps if you want to use the creature in a video game?
Yes. You can even make it as a normal map or a displacement map. Not that you use displacement maps in video games, but you can. We do not have time to show it today, but there is a very simple way of doing it inside of Blender. Yes? I've been asked to show my teeth. That's not what meant. I used the ear from, I used Chisel 3D and then ear 3 I used to make teeth. I did not use the toothbrush. I used ear 3 from Chisel 3D. Yeah. Beep, 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 beep. Where was I? I was on scales. All right. Any more questions from online?
Nope.
All right. Should have done that with symmetry. And what I'm using right now is not a scale, it's called neck for some reason. There we go. Can I just replace that entire thing? I can. Yes.
I would just have a few questions coming in here. First from Frederick saying, what is the best way to make a sharp jaw? Would that be the move tool or maybe the snake hook?
A sharp.
Yeah, jaw, or like the beak, like if you want to get something super sharp.
Jawline or beak.
I think so. I think that would be jaw or like the beak. I would say just like to get that very pointy.
So if we're doing this beak here, I would. Let me just go to this one's butt. Like, oh Jesus, come on. Here we go. All right. So if we say this is going to be the beak, I would use the move brush to pull it out like this, and then I would shape it to the overall like round shape. If we're doing a parrot's beak instead, I'd shape it like a parrot's beak. And then I'm all answering a question. And then I'd go from the like angle that's straight on, and then shape it to the width I wanted. So if I wanted a parrot's beak, this is the way I'd do it, and then I'd do the inside afterwards. And again, I don't mind this stretching of geometry. It's not bad. I even know there are ZBrush artists who use that stretching like for details. Ashley Adams, I think her name is. She's just absolutely brilliant. So yeah. So just doing like this, this. And we have a quick question from the classroom. Mito. No, you do not have focal shift in this one. Yes.
Matthias is saying, when should you model or sculpture? I guess the answer would be when you want more detail, but is there a rule of thumb? For example, if I want to make a lantern, is that model or sculpture?
You can sculpt it, but honestly, that's a bigger headache. There are a few people who can model really well in ZBrush, but I'm sure that those same people will be so much quicker if they did it in Blender or Maya or whatever 3D software they model in. So if you're doing something, as a rule of thumb, especially if you're a beginner, if you're doing something hard surfaced, you model it. And then if you want to add scratches and bumps and like hammer marks and stuff like that, you'll take it into a sculpting software. If you're making something organic, you can model it, but this is just so much quicker. There's really no competing with it. We had a beautiful, or I was talking to our teacher Björk the other day, who is our dedicated sculpting, rendering teacher here at CADA, and he was saying right when he started his 3D journey, ZBrush came out. It hadn't really been a thing, and they all looked at it and was like, that's useless. Completely useless. Nobody can use that. Look, it has more than 40,000 polygons on a model. That's impossible to use. This was back in 2003. And they were all just looking at it like, this is completely useless. And then they learned the workflow of retopologizing it and went, oh, this changes everything. This changes the whole game.
And the last question, just a technical endpoint here. Sarah is asking or saying that it immediately ups the polygon count a lot when she adds the scales.
Change the draw size of your brush. This will change the density of what the scales come out as. So if I go in here and use scale, if I have a small brush, they're going to come out and it's going to give me 200,000 right away. If I have a bigger brush, it's going to be a lot less dense in poly count. It's going to be a lot better for you. So that's just, brush size. Oh, I got some gaps. Let's just fill them in. There we go. It's lovely. These scales also like are doing double duty because they sort of have a feather-like look to them once they come out like this. So we're getting back in. Go. Lovely asymmetry. All right, what are we doing for time? We got 20 minutes left, 20 seconds. All right, so I could do more work in this, but let me just show you the finishing steps of what we can do. So, in case you don't want to take it out of ZBrush Core Mini, but you just want to take out a nice picture or a nice video showing off what it is you got, right? We can do two things, or we can do three things, or we can do two things in that specific situation. We can either export an image. This will export a JPEG to your computer, and you can take that with you and do whatever you want with it. You can also take this little camera here, click that, and it's going to turn your dragon around all beauty-like, and it's gonna save out a movie that you can then play of a turntable of your little dragon. And this is really nice, this is really cool. It also has this middle function, export for 3D printing. Now that is a blatant lie, because while you can use it for 3D printing, it's just exporting it as an OBJ. OBJ is one of those standard file formats we use in 3D that allows us to export from one software to another one. So if I take this, I'm going to put it on my desktop. You can see I already have a weird dragon sculpt on my desktop. I'm going to call this Cocky Seahorse. There we go. And now it's exporting it. Should probably set it to low density first, or you'll be sitting here for a long time when you're trying to import it. So let me just redo that. Again, not losing any detail on it, so don't mind. Now I export Seahorse. Yes, replace that. Wonderful. So once we've exported it, we've gotten it out of ZBrush Core Mini, we might want to take it into something like Blender, a DCC software, because we want to do more with it. You can see here, lovely, I have my Bootcamp files and some other things. Digital content creator. It is generalist 3D softwares. So that will be your Blender, your Maya, your 3ds Max, your Rhino 3D, your Cinema 4D, all of those softwares are DCCs. I'm not going to give you the whole, this is how we navigate around in Blender. I'm just going to show you quickly. I'm going to press my space button to get my search menu up. I'm going to press or type in import. And I'm going to find my import wavefront OBJ. And then wherever I exported my Seahorse to, I am going to import that OBJ. And then I'm going to wait for a while, and it's going to come in. I'm going to switch to my mouse. There we go. Here we have our beautiful dragon inside of Blender. Now, it is way too dense to actually do anything with. It is still on 149,000 polygons, but we can do a retop of it. And I hope you're ready. We're going to add a plane. So we're going to press Shift A to add a plane, add anything to our scene. We're going to add a plane here. It'll of course spawn in the middle of our scene. So I'm just going to move mine out by pressing G and X. And scale it up. Here it is. This is my wonderful plane. And what I can do with my plane is I can turn on snapping, middle top, here, change it to face, and this will now allow me to snap this onto my dragon. It's always going to be on top of my dragon. More importantly, if we hit Tab and go into edit mode, we can now move our vertices into our dragon and place them where they should be. We can now extrude, like we did with the barrel's top or with the lid, and start making the basic shapes of our dragon again, but now we're doing it low poly. And this is what in general terms we call retopologizing. There are a lot of different rules here that we can use. Oh yeah. When you have created your face, go into its properties, go under viewport display, and turn on in front. This will allow it to always be in front. You can always see where it is. And then you can change its color so that it sort of stands out more. And you can change the A value of the color, it's alpha, so that it is halfway see-through. There we go. And then I think the last thing we need to do, go into shading options and say object. This will make it so that the viewport is shading per object and not standardly. So now we can see our dragon underneath, but we can also see our low poly retopologizing mesh that's coming, or that we're creating slowly. And this is what you need to do every time you do a sculpt, unless you're sculpting for 3D print. Do note that if you are using ZBrush Core Mini and you're using Blender, you do own every bit of, you know, geometry and 3D model you make. You don't have to pay any licenses to anybody anywhere. It's all free-ish. So that is wonderful. So, yep. So we're just retopologizing now. We're just creating the basic shapes of the dragon with more complex shapes. And this is really not as complicated as it looks. It is applying the principles we have of the barrel. We want edge loops. We want faces that make sense. We don't want any unnecessary geometry anywhere. So I'm just going to create this, going to create this. And I'm going to merge these by pressing M, and at center. I want this whole thing connected. Boop. I want these to be scaled in. Yeah. Yep. I'm sorry if this went a little bit fast. It was just sort of an extra thing I would like to show, and we're running out of time. So, yeah, so we got 10 minutes left. I know there will likely be 100 technical questions to what I just showed you, but if there are any other questions regarding the school or industry or processes, things like that, I would love to answer them. Or, you know, hit me up on the school's Discord, and I will answer them there. Yeah, I don't have Discord on this one. Sure. Yeah, it's a bit. I think it's a bit of a roundabout way of doing things, but yeah, you can also apparently send us a link to your, you know, things, and we will give some feedback. No.
They screenshot their creation.
Yeah.
Put it on Discord.
Oh.
We'll try and put it on your screen so we can.
Okay. So I'm being told that they're trying to figure out if we can. Nope. Okay. Mito will help me because he is better at these things than I am.
Hi. So, on our Discord, the one we sent in the chat, we have a Discord channel called 3D Bootcamp. That's basically for you all to share your chicken, seahorse, dragon thingies, because we really want to see them, or at least I personally want to see them. I texted in that channel as well. Please send pictures. I want to see how cool they are. It's very cool. Yeah, that's about it. So just send screenshots of what you've made. It would be really cool to see in the Discord, in the 3D Bootcamp channel.
Yeah.
Very good shout out.
So why are you making this
So,
lower polygon?
because the high poly version we have right now is useless for being anything else than a static object that, if we tried to deform this right now, would be horrible. It would ruin performances, the stream would crash, your stream would crash, it wouldn't be good. And if we gave this to an animator, that animator would be complaining within the first 2 minutes of having the model and going, this is too high density, it takes me 3 seconds from making a movement to seeing the movement, fix it. So you do this, and then you either take the high poly sculpt and bake it down as a normal map, which is complicated, or you bake it down as a displacement map. And those things, if you do a normal map, it fakes depth, and you use that for video games, or you do a displacement map, which will create a high poly version of your low poly model, but only in render. So you're not actually working with it in viewport, but when you render it out, we're talking about renders next week, then you will have a very, very dense model that will have all the details, but everybody else in the process can work on a very low dense model that will be a lot nicer.
Won't those be two separate files that you send, or are they linked?
No, they're linked. So that a displacement map is a black and white image that you have of the high detailed mesh, but instead of having it as polygons and faces and stuff like that, you have it as simple black and white information where white is far away from 0 and black is 0. So it actually gets extruded. It actually becomes geometry, but it only happens in render. All right. Coco Loco.
But you can scroll up and down and see what they have.
Yeah. Well, that's not very interactive. Coco Loco, you made a nice one. You got a lot more seahorse in there than I did. And suns, that looks nice. You got some nice muscle definition on the shoulder. Scales seem to be projecting a little bit into itself. Is that because you... Oh, you went the other way. Sorry, my bad. Yeah. Nostrils look good. Kuya says, this crashed my ZBrush. It's a nice little goblin. Beautiful. And Idanius? Oh, that is good. That looks very nice. A little too spiny for my taste on the head, but it's very good. You got a very good dragon-like shape. Sonatis. Oh, I like that. That's... Oh, that dragon reminds me of something. Trying to figure out where that's from. Yeah. So yeah, you use low poly for everything else in production, while you need, because you need to. You can't work on this high dense mesh for anything. You can in 3D print because you don't care about mesh, but also because the way this is set up, the way Blender and all other DCCs translate movement data, deformation data, will not look good with this type of geometry. It's going to look so weird. Things are going to be penetrating all the time. So having smooth, correct topology and line work is going to give you a lot nicer deformation. And if you want to texture this, you got to do something called an unwrap. And that's, oh, you can't do that on this thing. So. Okay, I'm getting a sea urchin beastie like that. Oh, Kiratu Asuna, that's very nice. I like the toucan-ish bill on it as well. Gammelseng. Oh, that does look like an old bed. It's nice. Very Pokemon-ish. It's very nice. Oh, that's very Crane from Avatar. So yeah. And also the reason why I'm only working on one side here, like I showed you last time, we have the subdivision surface with the barrel. We also have a mirror modifier that will allow us to just duplicate the object. Can we have it? Oh, that's X. Yeah. Well, I can also just set object origin to object geometry. Origin to geometry. Nope. Origin to 3D cursor. There we go. So here I can start. Oop. Yeah. So here I can start. Yeah, like because I'm mirroring it, everything I do on one side is going to happen on the other side as well, and it's going to speed up my workflow right up until I hit major, what's it called, asymmetry. All right, so that was all. Are there any final comments and questions from the online people? If not, I think we are done for today. Any final questions? Nope. All right. Well, then I'd just like to say thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope to see you again next week where we will be texturing and shading and rendering out a weapon of some sort. I think I have a few things lying around. It's either going to be a sword or an axe. I have a very nice sword, so I think we're going to use that. And we're going to be texturing that in the style of computer games, so it's going to be double-sided texturing, and we're going to be doing that mostly inside of Blender, both playing around with the texture painter and playing around with procedural shading. It's going to be good fun. And yeah, hope to see you everybody on the Discord, and have a nice evening.